back. It's time to talk money, and today you're focusing on getting your business from being offline to online. And joining me is Mr. Jerry Jariwala, who is an expert in marketing and the head of Moo Marketing, right?
That's right.
Welcome to the show and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so let's talk about traditionally, any business that starts off, it's offline, but then there's an importance to going online. So tell us about that transition, how one can make it to being online.
Well, I think to start with, I think there are three ways to grow any business, whether it's offline or online. A mentor of mine called Jay Abraham came up with those three methods. Those three methods essentially are to increase the number of customers that you serve, to increase the frequency of which you serve them,
right.
And the third way is to increase the transaction value of what you're actually selling. Now, when we talk about offline to online, what online is providing us is a new channel to that market, to those three ways of growing your business. So, for example, if you had a shop, which is what we say offline, and it was in the CBD, and you wanted to suddenly start trading in Mombasa, then you only really have one of two choices. You either start up a shop in Mombasa,
right.
or you send a sales team to Mombasa to sell your products. Now, online, you can do that without having that kind of overhead. It allows you to tap into new markets, which is effectively selling more customers. But I think the major advantage of being online as opposed to offline is not only access to the market, but also the fact that you can actually capture data.
Right. So if you're practically speaking, if I cannot afford to set up a whole new shop in Mombasa, then being online would enable me to capture that particular, market without necessarily having to have a physical presence or more staff in, Mombasa, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how then do you do it, that transition. For a lot of people, some are less tech savvy and some are just intimidated by the idea of having being online. So if we could break it down to very simple terms, being online, does it mean a website, social media? What does it mean to go online?
I think for me, online is simply having an online presence.
Yeah.
And that online presence should be really a combination of both social media and a website.
Okay.
I think if you're a home-based business, there are many people just operating off social media, but that's more of maybe kind of a side hustle.
Right.
However, I have heard of people making it a great success. Having said that, I think to answer your question, it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
A business taking online seriously should have a way of transacting online, which is essentially a shopping cart, some way of paying the supplier online. So that could be by M-Pesa or by card or something like that.
And so in order to do this, is it required to get another professional to do it for you, or should you just take up the task yourself? And if so, what are the basics of doing the transition?
I think I would always urge people to focus on what they're good at.
Right.
And I always view new things like this. There is a short way of doing it and a long way of doing it. The long way is to do it yourself. It's of course the cheaper way, but there's an opportunity cost there as well that the business owner should take in mind. When you're thinking about something new, the instant natural instinct is to try it yourself.
Yes.
And I have no problem with that. I think people should try it themselves. But as soon as it starts to get traction and you realize that you've tapped into an audience that's engaging with your brand and your products,
right.
then I think at some stage it would be advisable to start getting experts involved.
Absolutely. And now, speaking of approaching it in a more professional way, there's something that we mentioned in our last discussion that I would like you to go back to also. Sure. That process of getting down to the sale and making sure that your customers are repeat customers and not just ending at the inquiry level. Could you please explain to people why it's important to go to the sale and even further?
Yeah, I think, first of all, before we get to that point, I think it's important to understand where we are in terms of the internet as a whole.
Yes.
When I started using the internet for my businesses, it was 2002, 2003, so a very long time ago. But and that was in England, and that market was at the very same stage as this market is here today. So when we're talking about online, I think we first of all have to understand the whole marketplace. Once we do that, we realize that actually people still have trust issues when transacting online.
Sure.
So I see online in this region as a way of communicating with your prospective customers, and the main objective is to get data. Because once I get your name, email, and phone number, that gives me a platform to continue that conversation with you, not just like on Instagram.
So when you're trying to while you're having this conversation with a person or your prospective client, you shouldn't be just focusing on what's your size, what color do you want. You should be going further into getting more details about how to reach out to them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and then after that?
Well, a lot of people go straight for the sale. And I think before you've even got to the sale, all you have at that point, if it's a DM on Instagram or an email, all you've got is the username of the person messaging you. But I always urge people, when they're transitioning offline to online, treat it like you would as if the person was sitting in front of you. So if a customer came in and it was a deep, what I call a high-ticket sale, then the first thing that you're going to say is, what's your name? So, like, what we do online is we forget that and we just go straight for the sale because we can't see or feel or touch that person in front of us. We think just because it's on the other side of a phone, we tend to treat it differently. So I urge people to mimic the way that they would meet people offline as online as well.
Okay, and what are some of the tools that one can use to aid in getting this? We hear about bots and things like that. Could you explain what those are and how they aid in this particular process?
Well, tools, like anything, are used to make things more efficient. So before we even get to tools, I think what you need to start with is the basics. And the basics with any kind of online business, the first step is attraction. So how are you going to attract your ideal client or your ideal customer to your brand? And the most obvious one right now is Instagram, Twitter. It's social media. So how do you get your customer audience engaged with your brand and your platform, is to attract them by posting. It could be informative. I always urge people to inform their audience, educate, rather than just posting a picture of a pair of shoes.
With a prize there.
Exactly.
And this pulls them in.
Absolutely.
How then? Because when I'm going online and I'm looking for a pair of heels or a belt or whatever, I just want a belt. So what is it that more information does to keep me hooked to your platform or your brand?
Well, I think that's where the tools come in.
Okay.
So once I've got your details, then I can use tools to automate that nurturing process. And the nurturing process is simply me keeping in touch with you. But because of the power of the internet, if I have an offline shop, I may expect 100, 200 people to walk in. Online, I can reach thousands of people. Now, if I'm collecting information of thousands of people, then manually doing that becomes very tedious and labor intensive. That's where the tools come in. We use a tool called Get Clients for Me, and that tool... It's called Get Clients for Me.
Get Clients for Me.
It's a software tool that's used to capture details and take people through a journey of A to Z but using automation so that you as the business owner don't have to sit there and SMS each one of the 10,000 people that you've attracted. You can use automation to actually make that much more efficient without increasing your overheads.
Okay, so how does this work? Let's take the example of the application we talked about, Get Clients for Me. So how does it swing into action when someone is interested in your brand?
So I'll give you an example of what we're doing.
Yeah.
I publish lots of content online, trying to educate people on my experience and my stories. Once people show interest, they either go to my website or they DM me or my business. Once we're having a conversation through that platform, we're collecting that information. That information is then plugged into that platform, and that starts what we call a campaign.
Yeah.
And that campaign is very soft touch, as if, like I said, as if I was meeting you face to face. It's just a, hey, hello, I'm Jerry, nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit more about you.
Okay.
So as if I met you for a coffee. So that kind of narrative is what can be pre-programmed in the software to actually not only email you, but once we've got your telephone number, we can also approach you from SMS. Some people just don't read their emails.
Yeah.
But you may read your SMS more likely.
Right.
So what we use that platform for is finding out which way is the best way to communicate with you.
Okay, so these are, I would say, more modern ways of marketing, but then the ways that you used to do mass emailing, are they better than the traditional ways of marketing? Do they have more efficacy compared to the others?
Well, like all technology, is continuously improving.
Right.
I've just mentioned one aspect of this piece of software. The other aspect is actually taking people through what we call a pipeline.
All right.
And a pipeline could be the stages of a business transaction. So if we're talking about someone buying insurance, for example, insurance, how do you buy insurance? You might see an ad.
Yeah.
And typically that's how insurance companies would work, whether it's on a billboard or whether it's on radio, TV, or social media. That person would respond to that ad. Now, once they've responded to that ad, my job is to collect their information. That's stage one.
Yes.
Second stage that we talked about is automated nurturing, which is those emails and SMSs going out. Then it's about engagement and finding out really what that customer wants. So if it's insurance, is it insuring my health? Is it insuring my car, my vehicle, my house, my office, whatever it might be. Now I'm getting more information. That software will then tag that customer or that prospect and put them in a virtual bucket.
Okay.
So if I'm a customer that's interested in vehicles, I'll tag them as a vehicle customer, and then the software will start to give them and push out more information about the importance of vehicle insurance. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So it's kind of matching the relevancy of what they're interested in versus the information that you're pushing out as a brand.
Right. Well, this it makes sense, but it seems like something that would be very difficult for someone who's not into marketing to do on their own. So how would I approach it if I just have maybe an Instagram shop or a small website somewhere online, and I want to get these sort of automated responses out to people, interactions? Can I actually get some of these programs myself and do it on my own?
You can, absolutely.
Right? Is it that easy?
I wouldn't say, like anything, it's got a learning curve.
Yeah.
If you're a plumber, then your skill is plumbing.
Yes.
And if you're a self-employed plumber, suddenly you're in a business.
Yeah.
Now, you've spent the last 10 years learning how to be a plumber. Now you've suddenly come across this challenge of business.
Yeah.
So like anything, there's a learning curve. So as I said earlier, there's a long way of doing it and a short way of doing it. You can purchase the platform on itself, and we provide training for those platforms as well. So you've always got the option of training and learning it yourself, or we also provide what we call a done for you. So we actually
Just
set up
take
the
it
system, install it for them, set it up, so that the business owner can concentrate on insurance or plumbing, whichever your business is. So that's where you talk about bringing the expert in.
Yes.
At that point, when a customer thinks about really taking this platform seriously,
Yes.
they would start to talk about efficiency, they would start to talk about automation and mass scaling up.
Yeah.
So can you imagine that if you're tucked away on a side street, you may have, like I said, 100, 200 people coming into your shop, but suddenly, if you put the same amount of money as you put into your rent in the CBD, for example, into ads online, you have suddenly reached thousands of people.
Right.
And that gives you a much better platform to start scaling your business up on.
Okay. And now, obviously, you have worked with many businesses in this. Could you give us a real example of someone who actually managed this transition and doubled or tripled or whatever their profits?
Sure. Just down the road, on Mombasa Road, there was a client of ours who was thinking about closing his business because he was surrounded by 27 manufacturers who were manufacturing the same product within 3 square miles. So that essentially meant that the marketplace was very crowded.
Yeah.
And being a crowded marketplace, business owners often have to consider whether it's worth staying in the game or not.
Yeah.
So he approached me with this challenge, and I said to him, well, just give us a month. His normal, traditional way of doing business, and this is a prime example of a business going from offline to online. His traditional way of doing business was to send a salesperson to a distributor as a manufacturer. He would take that product and sell to a distributor who would sell to his client base. Now, the problem that this business had was not that the distributor wouldn't buy his products, was the fact that the distributor wouldn't pay for the products for 90, 120, 180 days. And I'm sure business owners that might be watching this can totally relate to what I'm talking about. So our approach was something what I call direct to customer.
Okay.
So that was skipping the supply chain and taking a manufacturer direct to customer.
Okay.
So that's taking his product, skipping the distribution channel, offering it direct to the end user, and getting paid in cash. So that particular case study generated 20 million shillings in 8 days.
So literally cut out the middleman.
Cut out the middleman, received the money on M-Pesa, and suddenly it revived his business because it injected 20 million shillings into his business in 8 days. There's not many businesses that can make that kind of transition, and that is a prime example of really utilizing the online platforms.
And this actually, I guess, helped him tap into a market that is not saturated. He's not competing with the people who are...
He was the only one out of those 27 competitors that was doing that.
Wow.
So first to market is always an advantage, and you can always say, I wish I did that, but if you're the first person to do that, and this person was actually the first person to be there as a manufacturer in that industry, and suddenly, gone 10, 20 years, he's now surrounded by competitors.
Yes.
So I'm sure his competitors are going to now look at his business and see him making waves and possibly imitate or join the party.
Absolutely. Now, I'm thinking of the rigidity some people have because of a lack of trust of online platforms and these new things that everyone are doing. So do you experience that kind of problem, trying to push people into realizing that this is good for them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In order for any business to thrive and survive, you need to know, like, and trust your supplier.
Yes.
Now, most people at the moment, like I said, we have to understand the marketplace. Trust is a major factor when it comes to online transactions. So what I'm trying to explain to my customers is don't go for the sale, go for the lead. And that is simply collecting information. So if you use online as a platform to collect the information, then you can transition from online to offline very easily.
Right.
Because if I call you, suddenly it's much more believable that I'm a real business. I'm talking about my products. You can ask me where I'm based, where my warehouse is, how I make transaction, what the delivery is going to be. Much easier to have that conversation on the phone than to follow a process online. I don't think we're quite there yet. We are definitely moving towards it very fast. But if you think about the large population we have in this country, as a population, We're not there.
Yeah.
So in the West, it's much, much more different. It's mature. They've had the internet for 20 years and they've had time to acclimatize to that platform. Whereas here, we're still, not all of us even have a smartphone.
Oh, yeah.
So we're still at a very early stage. In my view, if I had advice for a business transitioning online, focus on the lead. Get the customer details, and then do what you normally do.
Right.
Get on the phone.
And make those conversations. There are certain practices that I see online that even I, who's not in business, feel like this couldn't be right. Because you go to a platform and they've put their product there and they don't put the price, and they're like, if you want to, get in touch to buy this, you have to get to my WhatsApp line. So go to that number in my bio, and then it feels like I'm jumping loopholes, but at the same time, they seem to be doing what you're talking about, trying to get my contact information.
Yes.
So is this right or wrong? Because for me, it's irritating as a possible client, but from what you're talking about, it seems like they are actually doing the thing where you're supposed to get data from your clients.
Yeah, I mean, I would say think about your offline transactions. When you go to open a bank account, they're not just going to open a bank account for you.
Yeah.
They're going to take your information. You're going to have to go through loops. Now, people may not be used to that when buying a pair of heels.
True, yeah.
Having said that, it's the way that the business chooses to do business.
Right.
Now, yes, if you're a customer, you just want the price. Right? You like the look, you want to know about the quality, you want to know about all these things, and just give me the price. And then you want to be able to make that decision. However, from a business owner's point of view, they're playing the other game.
Yes.
So they're trying to get your details, and then so that they can start to give you different offers. So today you're looking at a pair of orange heels. Next week, you might be looking at a pair of black heels, or your shoes break and you need another pair.
Yeah.
So their objective is to stay front of mind. How do they differentiate themselves from the rest of the competition online and offline?
Yeah, and that will be it. Now, if you're looking to have longevity, I imagine consistency is key. Tell us about the role of consistency in going online.
Well, I think consistency is even more important online than offline, because the barriers to entry for an offline business is generally much higher than an online business. As we've talked about, you need salespeople, you need licenses, you need rent, you need to find a location, staff, etc. So that's what we're doing offline. Online, all I need really is an Instagram account. I don't even have to have my own products. I can go to a supplier or a wholesaler, buy from them, and then resell as long as I have an audience. So that's the real quickest way to get online.
And as we wind up the conversation, do you have anything else that you'd like to add on how to get offline to online?
I think for most businesses, focus on the lead.
Yeah.
Really focus on taking that customer. Once they've built up trust, they'll transact online if you have that facility, but handhold them through in the beginning stages. Don't go for the sale. Start to focus on relationships, focus on capturing that detail. Once they've bought from you once or twice, then it's fine. Then they'll go to your website, see what you've got, and then because that trust and that relationship has already been built.
Right. And for the various forms of businesses, does this cut across? Because we have products, services, sometimes it's just personality brands. Does this also apply in those scenarios?
I think it applies to all online, all businesses, full stop. Because if it's not now, it's going to be later.
Yeah.
So jump on the bandwagon, get to know where your ideal client is, and go get them.
Okay, that is Mr. Jerry Dariwala, who is you're the CEO.
That's right.
Of Moo,
Moo Marketing.
Marketing. Okay, and And just a reminder of our Twitter poll question. We asked you earlier on if you feel that the judiciary is helpless in the face of blatant disregard of court orders by different government agencies. Is the judiciary helpless in the face of blatant disregard of court orders and different government agencies? We'd like to get sample some of your reactions, and I think Michael's going to get that for us.
Yes, and well, there's been quite a number of reactions coming through. And we have Engineer Isaac Mudusi, who says, no, the executive arm of government is frustrating judiciary arm of government. We have Jennifer, who says that indeed we are becoming a failing state, given that the judiciary seems to be helpless. We also have another tweet that says, it is unfortunate when we have one arm of government locking out the other arm of government. So we'll keep this conversation going on. And the question, of course, is the judiciary helpless in the face of blatant disregard of court orders by different government agencies? And that's the question that we're asking. But we'll keep the conversation going online. But looking at the time, it is now time for us to wind up the show. And I don't know your take, especially on your last conversation there. I thought it was rather interesting.
Yeah,
and it looks like the world is definitely going online. Whether we like it or we don't.
I think we're playing catch up because the world seems to have already gone online.
It is online.
So we're playing catch up, and the good thing is that it applies across board. So I think we can even apply it to our personal brands, whatever he was talking about. But I guess we're going to have more of these conversations every month. So keep it KTN and Morning Express to get to learn more about how to handle your money.
And I think the timing is also perfect because this being the beginning of the year, it is a good time for you to look at your business and say, hey, are we doing well? Are we doing as we should? So maybe it's about time you considered going on